Welcome to City Club Missoula's August Forum, Treasure State Taxes, shedding light on Montana's tax system. I'm Julie Maloney, and I have the honor of serving as the chair of the City Club Missoula's Board of Directors. Thank you all for being here today. City Club's mission is to bring people together to inform and inspire them on issues vital to the community through public forums that encourage the discussion of new ideas and the free exchange of thought. We have a deep commitment to civility and civil discourse, even when we discuss challenging issues. Before introductions, some thank yous. Thanks to Missoula Community Access Television, which records our forums as part of their media assistance grants to nonprofit organizations. MCAT serves our community on cable channels 189 and 190. MCAT occasionally live streams our forums on its local live platform as well. You can find videos of past CCM forums by clicking the video button on our website, cityclubmissoula.com. Many thanks to our sponsors, especially those at the executive level. They are Blackfoot Communications and First Security Bank. Our executive level sponsors are key partners in helping to expand audience access and reliably planning and conducting our forums. We're grateful to all of our sponsors, and we invite you to join them. Thank you also to our board of directors and our administrator, Danny Hallett. On behalf of City Club Missoula, we acknowledge that we are in the Aboriginal territories of the Salish and Kalispel people. Today, we honor the path they have always shown us and caring for this place for the generations to come. We are grateful to share this special place with our neighbors and friends. Our moderator for today's panel is Justin Engel. Justin Engel is Professor of Marketing and the Poe Family Distinguished Faculty Fellow at the University of Montana. He is also the host of the current affairs show, A New Angle, on Montana Public Radio. Justin will introduce our panelists, and I will see you all again around 12:20, at which point we will begin table talk, and then open the forum up to questions from the audience. Over to you, Justin.
Okay. This one on? Yeah? Okay. Well, thanks everyone for coming out for this important conversation. It's hard to find someone who enjoys paying taxes.
It's not on.
It's not on, okay. Even better. It's on, it doesn't work. I'm gonna grab that one. Test. Oh, yeah, there we go. Now we go. Okay, thanks everyone for coming out and participating in this important conversation. You know, it's hard to find someone who enjoys paying taxes, but it's equally hard to find someone who doesn't rely on something that those taxes pay for. It's a complex and emotional topic, and today we're going to hear three different perspectives on it. Dan Bucks has over 50 years of public policy and administrative experience focusing on taxation and natural resource issues. He served as director of the Montana Department of Revenue from 2005 to 2013. He served as the executive director of the Multi-State Tax Commission from 1988 to 2005. Prior to that, Dan was deputy director of the Montana Department of Revenue. Dan earned his undergraduate degree from Grinnell College and a master's in public administration from the University of Montana. He writes and consults on issues of taxation, public finance, and federal land management. Greg Hertz was born in Malta and raised in Lake County. He studied business at the University of Montana and then practiced as a certified public accountant in Kalispell, Billings, and Polson. He's the longtime president and CEO of Moody's Market Incorporated, the operator of 6 grocery stores in Montana and Idaho. And in 2021, he led the conversion of Moody's to an employee-owned corporate structure. Greg served in the Montana House of Representatives from 2013 to 2020. During the 2019 session, he served as Speaker of the House. He moved over to the Montana State Senate in 2021 and is currently chair of the Senate Taxation Committee. Then we have Josh Slotnick. Josh was elected to the Missoula County Commission in 2018. He has farmed in Missoula with his wife on their family farm since 1992. In 1996, he co-founded Garden City Harvest and the Peas program as part of the Environmental Studies program at the University of Montana. He originally moved to Montana from Grand Forks, North Dakota, to earn a philosophy degree from the University of Montana. Josh served in the Peace Corps and earned a master's degree in agricultural extension from Cornell University. We'll start with Dan Bucks. This one works, so take this one. Yeah.
Good morning. Can you hear me? Thank you. Thank you very much to the City Club for organizing this forum, and to all of you who have come today to hear this discussion and participate in it. I think you deserve some kind of special reward for starting your week by being part of a discussion on taxation. I'm hoping that the three of us presenting here don't ruin the rest of your week. It's probably. I will focus mostly on property tax issues, because that is the pressing issue for Montanans right now. The history of our modern property tax system begins with the 1972 Constitutional Convention. Convention delegates knew that political shenanigans, fiscal manipulation, and corporate corruption had produced serious property tax inequities. Large corporations paid too little, and homeowners and small businesses paid too much, and random favoritism run amok in too many places. Delegate McKeown of Anaconda declared local property tax appraisal to be the worst evil in the Montana governmental system. Delegate David Drum of Billings argued that property tax equalization was essential to Montana's future prosperity, because businesses needed a level playing field if they were to invest with confidence in the state. So property tax fairness and equalization became a major goal of the convention. They created a statewide property appraisal system and an independent and open appeals process as the key instrument of achieving tax fairness. But McKeon also feared that future legislatures would succumb to the same corrupting influences that had made local property assessment evil. So he proposed to limit the legislature's power to enact exemptions or special favors that would undermine tax fairness. But that was rejected. And unfortunately, McKeon's prediction that future legislatures would create tax inequities has become all too true. Especially since 1999, the legislature has enacted property tax exemptions and other breaks that favor large corporate and industrial taxpayers over homeowners and renters. The legislature has failed to support modernizing valuation practices for corporate and industrial property to reflect full market value. They have urged the department to settle corporate property taxes behind closed doors instead of requiring corporations to use the open appeals process as every other taxpayer must do. What Delegate McKeon feared about future legislatures has come true. So since 1998, the share of property taxes borne by homeowners and renters rose gradually over 25 years from about 37% of the property taxes to 52% last year. But that shift was gradual and not fully felt by homeowners and renters because legislatures mostly took home price inflation out of the property tax equation by lowering the residential property tax rate with each appraisal. Now that has all changed. In 2023, Montana homeowners and renters are about to experience the largest property tax increase in history, nearly $200 million, and an 18% increase in 1 year. That has never happened before. It has never happened before. This huge tax increase is a disaster for Montana workers, retirees, and other residents with modest incomes or less, and will cause real harm to their well-being. This record tax increase is not an oversight or accident. It is the result of a conscious decision by the governor and legislature to fail to do what legislatures in the past 40 years, have done to stop this kind of property tax increase. They failed to reduce the residential property tax rate to take home price inflation out of the property tax equation. Last November, the Department of Revenue told the governor and legislature that they could stop this tax increase by reducing the residential tax rate from 1.35% to 0.94%. So the legislature and governor knew exactly what needed to be done, but they decided not to do that and instead to raise taxes on homeowners and renters on a permanent basis. Yes, they provided a temporary rebate. There are some problems with the rebate, but the biggest problem is that it is temporary, and the tax increase they imposed on residences at this particular point in time is forever, unless other action is taken in the future at some time. While property taxes are increasing for homeowners and renters, property taxes will automatically go down for large corporations and industrial taxpayers. Homeowners and renters will pay for these corporate tax cuts. Indeed, the largest part of the tax increase that homeowners and renters will experience this year will go to funding those tax cuts, and it is a huge problem. Now, this tax shift is hard to understand. And one of the reasons it's hard to understand is that when you get your property tax bill, you're going to see you pay X dollars and it goes to all of these funds, local government and some to the state government and what have you, and there's a big listing of them, and some of you look over that list, fortunately, very carefully and see what's happening. But guess what? That doesn't tell you the real story, because that money doesn't stay in those funds. This year, most of the increase you're going to pay doesn't go to spending that stays with those programs, with those funds. It goes to backfill and offset the tax cuts that are automatically going to large corporations and industrial taxpayers. When they open their tax bills, their dollars go down and yours go up. Now, I got 2 minutes left, I guess, but I want to show you some examples of how this works quickly. And yes, your worst fears are going to be realized. A nerdy tax guy with bad slides and too many numbers. And I'm going to do my best here in the time we have. There's a disclaimer here. I'm not going to go over it. What it says is that I am using the DOR's, the Department of Revenue's official data. It's the best estimates that are out there that are uniform across the state, but they're not exact or precise. And that's what that's all about. This is a chart from the Legislative Fiscal Division, and it shows, it's the orange or brownish orange that counts, the 18% increase for homeowners, 5% for commercial, 7% for forest land, 6% for renewable energy. Ag goes down, but all the other decreases here, all the other decreases are for corporate and industrial property. Now that's the first picture you get. But you know what? That's still hard to understand. What does it mean in terms of examples? Well, I've contacted some people I know and gotten them to submit to me their appraisal information. And here's the estimated change. Missoula County taxpayer example A. An $800 increase, $799, $800 estimated increase. Of that, $500 is going to go to other taxpayers. $250 and change will go to the state government for state property taxes. $46 to local government and schools. And of the $500 that goes to tax cuts, $421 will go to large corporate and industrial property. You won't see this on your tax bill, but that's what's happening behind the scenes in terms of how the property tax system really works. In all these examples, you're going to be paying out of your increase, when you get it, 60 to 70% more to reduce the taxes of large corporations and industrial properties. You're going to pay about 25% more to the state, and local governments are going to get 10%. Quickly, if my time is up, next example, $500, $251 goes to large corporate taxpayers. Example C, this is up in the Sealy-Swan region, $802, $482 to large corporations and industrial property. Same thing, Lewis and Clark, 800 county, $873, $513 to large corporate and industrial property. And another taxpayer, $715 increase with $448 to large corporate and industrial property. That's the pattern. That's what is really going on. I don't know how to turn this off, so I'll leave that there. Let me just wrap up here. The increase in taxes to finance corporate and industrial tax credit is directly the opposite of what state officials are claiming. They're blaming the increase that you're going to see on local governments. That's not what's really going on. This is the real thing that happens behind the scenes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Director. I'm not going to go in and disagree with everything Dan said here, but I do have some different opinions. So taxes, property taxes are very complicated, especially school taxes. I mean, there's not very many people out there other than the school administrators who understand property taxes. I'm going to try to cover three different things today. First, basically different classes of property, who pays property taxes and how much. And then also I'm going to basically show you different taxes in different cities and counties. And then I'm going to finish up with a different in what the 95 mills, what you pay to the state, what happens with them. I'm going to get down here. And so the first chart up here, and I've left a few copies on your table. Sorry I didn't have enough. This is a tax burden table. And basically what this shows, this was prepared by the Montana Taxpayers Association with information. And so what we have here, this has three columns. It's got the tax rate. Let's look at residential. Tax rate 1.35. And I got a ratio here. So this is what we're keying off of is residential taxes. And if you have a $100,000 house that had 500 mills, that taxpayer would pay $675. So this kind of shows different classes here. Agriculture, which is, they're at 1.6 times the rate that residential people are paying. Agriculture is different though. They're valued on production. They're not valued at fair market value. But that taxpayer, you can see they're paying not quite double what a residential. You look at commercial. A commercial taxpayer is at 1.89, but 1.4% more than a residential. And you go down, one of our highest taxes are centrally assessed, non-centrally assessed, 8%. So they're paying almost 6 times the rate of a residential taxpayer. Pipelines, almost 9 times. And so you can see that residential property taxes, as a percentage, are basically much lower than a lot of these other things. And you talk about shifting taxes to maybe one of our largest utilities. Have you looked at your Northwest utility bill? For those of you, it has a separate line in there that the legislature put in there to tell you how much of your bill is taxes, and about 20% of your utility bill is property taxes. So if you want us to switch and move taxes over to Northwest Energy, guess what? Your power bill is just going to go up. So let's go on to the next slide, please. So this is a slide that I put together here. It's not easy to get comparisons in different counties. I had to use cadastral. I'm a citizen legislator. I don't have any staff. I got to pull all this together myself. But I used cadastral, and I tried to find this imaginary $375,000 house, which isn't around too much anymore. And then I had to go out to the county website. I mean, Missoula County, a lot of the big counties are great. They use Tyler, and you can go out and you can actually see your property tax bill. But the smaller counties like Lake County, all I can see is how much you paid. So here's this imaginary home. In Missoula, your taxes on that house, if you live in the county, are approximately $4,150. In the city, it's $5,100. And you can see, and I don't know if Missoula County is the highest or not. I just grabbed Missoula, but I grabbed Lewis and Clark, Billings, and you can see different tax structure in different areas. You look at Lake County, that same house in Lake County would be $2,700. In the city, $3,100, and that's probably a reason why I know a lot of Missoula residents like to go down and live in Arlee to avoid some taxes, and they go down to Ravalli County too. And so if you look down here, you kind of wonder, why are taxes in Madison County and Ennis so much lower? You know what's in Madison County? The Yellowstone Club. So you think of the Yellowstone Club maybe being in Gallatin County, they wish it was, but it's up there and it's over. So that really helps. You got these high value taxpayers who are basically providing a lot of the taxes, and the same in Fallon County. You get down here, Fallon County, what do they got there? A lot of oil and gas wells and pipelines, and they're paying a lot of taxes, so that reduces the residential rate. Unfortunately, my county, Lake County, we used to have 3 sawmills. We used to have a dam. We have no more sawmills. The dam is not on the tax rolls. We are the highest county in Montana for residential property. 80% of our taxable value in Lake County is residential. Only 20% is the other. So you can see in Lake County, the residential property owners pay quite a bit in taxes there. And what do all these counties have in common? They all pay 95 mills, which goes to the state, which is, it can range anywhere from about 11%, like in Missoula, it's about 11% of your property taxes, all the way down to Fallon County, it's 30% of their property taxes. It's a flat $480 approximately on this particular house that goes to the state of Montana, the 95 mills. So that's going to go up because the 95 mills are static. We haven't changed them yet, but all of those individuals pay the same amount to the state of Montana. So if we go to the next slide, I'm going to kind of show you, so what's this 95 mills and what's it all about? And this is a chart that basically shows each county. So over here on the far side, this is an approximate estimation provided by Legislative Service Divisions what the 95 mills in that particular county is going to raise. The second column is how much funding does the state of Montana provide to that county in property tax and income taxes to fund the schools. And the last column, first column over here, is something called the guaranteed tax base. So where did this 95 mills come from? It came from lawsuits in the late 1990s and in the early 2000s legislation. This is based, the 95 mills is to help equalize taxation across the state and make sure that every student, no matter where you live, you're going to make sure that you have an equal opportunity, your school is funded on an equal level. And so that's what the 95 mills does. It basically helps when you have a particular county, such as Madison, that has a lot of high value property, or some of the oil and gas counties that have high value properties. So what you do is then you take that money and it's sent back to the state, and then the state redistributes it based on this guaranteed tax base over here that came out of the lawsuits. But if you look at some of these counties, we're saying, let's go down to Missoula here. So Missoula pays in $27.8 million in 95 mills. They get back $24.6 million. The total they get from the state is $87 million. So we provide another $60 million that's coming from income taxes and other sources. Let's go down and look at that. Let's look at Madison County. Almost $20 million the 95 mills raises in Madison County. There are not many schools in Madison County. They get $1.1 million back of that. what that allows the state to do is equalize that. And if you let's look at a county that's really gets a lot more back than they paid in. Let's go back to the top. Bighorn County paid in $2.2 million. They get back $5.6 million from the state for guaranteed tax base for their schools. And what does this money do? This helps reduce your local property taxes. This further helps reduce your local property taxes. And if the state's not sending money to your local schools, your taxes are going to go up at the local level. So that's kind of an understanding of these 95 mills, because property taxes, they're not fair, as former Director Bucks talked about. I mean, it's complicated. If you live in a particular area that has high value property, whether it's a dam, whether it's sawmills, whether it's commercial property, whether it's high value homes, that's not that. Just for them to keep all that money in that one county, it's not very fair. And so you need to figure out a way to redistribute it, and that's exactly what the 95 mills does. I mean, if we had the Keystone Pipeline going through eastern Montana, there were 5 counties that were looking at about $80 million a year in property taxes. We would have had to figure out, well, you can't just leave that with 5 counties. It's not really fair just because someone decided to throw a pipeline through your county. It does some problems, so you need to leave extra money there, just like you do with the oil and gas companies. But you need to redistribute that to make sure it's fair. So what did the legislature do or not do? Well, we had a lot of bills, and I had a lot of bills moving through Senate Tax, which I couldn't even get out of my own Senate Taxation Committee, which I wanted to sunset levies sooner. I wanted to make sure that right now you can pass a levy, it can live on forever. I wanted to give voters the opportunity to revisit those levies like every 10 years. Hey, maybe we don't want to do this anymore. Maybe our priorities have changed. But all of those things failed, and there was a lot of property tax that failed. But we did pass PTAP, which I worked with Representative Nick Kokolis from Great Falls on. That's a program that's been around for a long time, and we raised the income level to $37,000 and a $350,000 home. That really helps fixed income people. What that does, it works within a taxing jurisdiction. And so everybody who lives within taxing jurisdictions helps subsidize those people. So if you want a lot of amenities in your community like Missoula does, and that's fine, but you're going to have to pay for it, and you're going to have to help other people. The other bill that failed was it's called a circuit breaker. And the reason I don't like it is what it uses is income tax dollars, and it subsidizes high property tax counties and cities with other people's money. So if you're going to vote for something in this particular county and raise your own taxes, I don't think the rest of the people in Montana want to be subsidizing you for raising your own taxes. So I could go on forever, ever. Looks like my time's up. Looking forward to some questions. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks everybody for coming. It's a great thing to come talk about property taxes at lunchtime. So Justin told me I had 55 minutes. I have a 68 slide deck. It's a tight deck though. So when I was thinking about putting this together, this presentation I'm about to talk to you on, I was thinking about a professor I used to have at the university many years ago. Anybody remember Albert Borgman? Yeah, great. So I could hear Albert's voice in my head, and if you don't know him, just an incredible professor, a great public speaker. And he had a German accent. And I can hear Albert's voice in my head saying, "Josh, notes are for rookies." So instead of notes, I have a little mnemonic, a little device in my head so I can remember what to talk to you about. But I want to share that with you, so then you'll kind of have this outline. We can follow along. S-mob burden. It kind of sounds like it's my burden. S-mob burden. S is for spending. So you may have seen in the newspaper, on websites, charts and graphs showing local government spending is out of control. Shooting up. Here's inflation, here's population, spending is going way up. 2/3 of the money we spend at Missoula County does not come from local property taxes. 2/3 of the money we spend does not come from local property taxes. It comes from grants that we compete for, and we compete well because we have a really good staff. We compete for these state and federal grants and foundation grants, and we do things with this grant money like pave roads, do major infrastructure projects, do community mental health, pay for 911. We do this out of grants. 2/3 of the money we spend does not come from local property taxes. Other piece on spending that I really want to mention is the mill cap. Now, Allison, our comms person, if I say mill, she's like, don't talk about mills. I'm just going to put people to sleep. Basically, a mill cap means our taxation, how much we can tax people in Missoula County, is limited by the state. How much can we go up every year? We can do exactly what we did last year, plus an increase that's equivalent to half the 3-year average of inflation. We get to go up by half the 3-year average of inflation. Now we have 60 sheriff's deputies. Each of them has a rig. They go through 3-4 sets of tires a year. Could you imagine marching into Les Schwab? Being like, I'd like 2,000 tires, please, at half the rate of inflation. It just wouldn't work. So this begs the question, how is it we remain in operation when our ability to tax goes up at half the rate of inflation? Well, I mentioned that mill cap. There's one big thing that's outside of that mill cap, and it's newly taxable property. So when new houses, new buildings are built, they're outside of the mill cap this year. We, in local government, are in a grow or die situation in terms of operations. If we don't grow, we are not going to have enough money to keep going. And there's kind of a riddle embedded in here. Anybody, you all know what a cone is? K-O-A-N? It's a Zen cone. It's an unsolvable thing. It's like, if a politician announces something in the forest, is she still wrong? Right? It's a Zen cone. Okay. So the cone of property taxes, in terms of new growth, if we don't have new growth, we can't remain in operation. And the cost of bringing services to a new home is not entirely borne by the folks in that new house. That's a lot of words. I want to say it again. We got a new house that's built. We got to bring services to the new house. Wonderful. The new house is paying property taxes. All should be good. It doesn't work. The cost of bringing services to that new house is not met entirely by the folks who live in that house. Where do you think the delta comes from? Where does the difference come from? Anybody guess? Everybody. Mayor Chemist is right. Everybody else. New growth costs us money. New growth costs taxpayers money. And we desperately need new growth because we have a housing shortage and a worker shortage. And I personally, as a county commissioner, have worked hard to make housing more readily available. And without new growth, we can't stay in operation. And new growth costs us all money. You see the riddle, right? Okay, that was S. Remember S-mob, burden. The M-O in the mob is Missoula County, capital M, small o. MoCo, Missoula County. So if you're fortunate enough to have paid your house off, you're going to write 2 fat checks to Missoula County twice a year. And as you're writing those checks, you may say to yourself, what in the heck is the county doing with all this money? There are potholes in front of my house, and I see speeders every day. There's no enforcement. What are they doing with all this damn money? Well, by statute, we collect property taxes for a whole bunch of other jurisdictions that operate with property taxes. We collect taxes, as Senator Hertz said, for the state. We collect taxes for the city. We collect taxes for the school district. We collect taxes for the Missoula Urban Transportation District and every other small special district and irrigation district. We collect all that money. So when you write those fat checks, you're not writing them just to us. Senator Hertz mentioned we are fortunate enough to use Tyler Technologies. This is a great system. I'm glad you brought it up. I would encourage you all, go to Missoula County Property Tax Information System, type in your name or your address, and click on taxes, and then this is the best part, click on pie charts. And you can see, of that big fat check that you wrote to the county, how much is going to the school district, how much is going to the state, how much is going to the city and all the other districts and the county. And then you can click on the county pie chart and you can find out what did the county do with their portion of the money. And you can ask yourself, well, I spent $7 on the fair. Did I get hosed? Important question. So that's Missoula County. Now we're on to burden. We're on to B, which is budget. So we all got that very scary letter from the Department of Revenue. And I'm just going to kind of move quickly across from left to right. On the left-hand side, I'll talk about this slide at the end. We're saving that. On the letter from the Department of Revenue, it says, this is your home's new assessed value. And it went up 30 to 60%, and that's just crazy town. And it's also kind of an expression of reality. That's kind of fact. The next piece you'll see is the tax rate. And the senator mentioned this, as did former Director Bucks. There are 16 different property tax classifications in the state: residential, commercial, industrial, centrally assessed, a whole bunch of them. They each have their own tax rate. So basically, you take your assessed value and the tax rate, and you end up with your taxes. And a person would look at this letter and think, wow, my property taxes are just a function of math. It's kind of like your income taxes. Like you fill out the form, and a number gets spit out the end, and that's how much you pay. That's not how it works. We start with our budget. We have 30 departments. Each department presents us with how much it's going to cost to do exactly what they did last year, and then we look at modest improvements, and then we look at our mill cap, and then we do taxation. Budget first, then taxation. Not how can we tax maximally, and then we'll figure out how to spend the money. It's budget first. Last piece, and this is the biggest one, the burden. As Director Bucks mentioned, that tax rate, that's a really big deal. You take the tax rate and the value and put them together. And certainly, as the senator pointed out, there are other classifications where the tax rate is much higher, but it's tax rate and value. That's what gets to the tax liability. We have seen over the last 30 years, as Director Bucks pointed out, 1 minute, and I'll do best I can, a huge burden shift. Property taxes are a big pie. Most of that pie is now being shouldered by residential taxpayers. Last November, by statute, the Department of Revenue delivered to the legislature a notice saying, if we were to keep property taxes flat, which everybody would really like, the residential property tax rate should be adjusted to 0.94%. The legislature took a pass on that. They kept it at 1.35%, the biggest property tax increase of all time. We are experiencing a humongous, historic burden shift. And I'm glad Director Bucks mentioned this, because in the press you hear, their spending is out of control. We are not responsible for the burden shift. The legislature writes the rules of taxation. We abide by those rules, as do the school district and all those, and the city and everybody else. So this chart over here, on the bottom, that's taxation. That's how much the county's taxes have gone up. This is not spending, that's how much we tax. Our taxation has been modest, but the burden shift has been spectacular. Last thing I'll leave you with, because I know I'm down to seconds or I'm over. If the county was to say, this is out of control, we're going to go into FY24 with zero increase in our budget. We're not going to spend one more penny in our budget. We're just going to suck it up. We're not going to buy new tires. Your property taxes would still go up. Now that should give you pause. How is that possible? If we don't increase our budget at all, property taxes still will go up, and it's because of that burden shift. And I would reach out to our friends at the legislature to help fix this. Thanks for your time, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, gentlemen. Table talk is a very rich part of every City Club forum and arguably the gist of why we are here. We'll take about 5 minutes for each table to introduce themselves and come up with one question related to the presentations to ask the panel. A board member with a mic will come around afterward for a volunteer from each table to ask the agreed upon question. Please refer to the slide for guidelines regarding Q&A. As I said at the beginning, we are committed to civil discourse, so we ask that you keep your question respectful and you avoid making statements. Hello. As I said at the beginning, we are committed to civil discourse, so we ask that you keep your question respectful and you avoid making statements. We also ask that any members of the media save their questions until after the forum. Our panelists should be able to stick around after the forum ends. When asking your question, please stand up, introduce yourself, avoid making statements, and ask one question. Please be respectful of others and don't interrupt while questions are being asked. The board will handle anything they feel needs to be addressed. We have 2 people with microphones that will come to your table to have you ask your question. Please raise your hand to let them know you have the question. Thank you.
All right, my bad. So my name's Lee Martin. So the question I have is based on last week, I believe it was, Missoulian had a article about all the infrastructure needs throughout the state, bridges falling and stuff like that. So my question is, why are we getting a rebate on property taxes? And why are things being shifted to residential housing for property taxes if we have hundreds of millions of dollars of infrastructure needs that the state, counties, everyone throughout the state needs to fix?
I'll take that since I'm in the legislature. That's what the legislature decided. They wanted to do, provide a rebate, but we also provided $200 million for roads and bridges. In fact, I had a bill for $100 million of our surplus that's going back to cities and counties. It kind of got whittled down a little bit, but that is what we're doing. And you have to remember too, some of those bridges are very expensive to replace. I mean, some of those can be $3-4 million bridges when you have to build them up to federal standards. But that's what the legislature decided to do. We wanted to provide property tax relief because in the long run, we know we need to do more with our property tax system. The property tax rebate was a short-term fix. We're going to be revisiting in 2025.
Hold on to it while my name is John Ellingson. Our table has this question for Senator Hertz. I've got before me a copy of the memorandum to the Revenue Interim Committee dated November 17th, 2022. And that memorandum, it was referred to by Director Bucks, advised the committee that if the taxable value rate on residences was not reduced, that there would be a substantial increase in the taxes for residences. This is something that's been done by every legislature in the recent past. My question to you is, after having received notice of this, why didn't you do what your Department of Revenue suggested should be done to make sure that that there would be a neutral tax rate?
Thank you very much for the question. So I just want to clarify one thing. In recent legislature, we have not changed the tax rate since 2015 when we went to 2-year appraisals. I tried to change that tax rate in 2015. In 2017, I brought bills which were opposed both by Democrats and Republicans and Governor Bullock at the time. After that, I just gave up. I said, well, I guess the legislature and both sides of the aisle don't want to change these tax rates. One thing, too, you need to realize, this is kind of a misnomer what's out there in the press, too, when people are reading. If we were to lower those rates, your taxes are not going to not go up. When we lower those rates, the 95 mills or any fixed mill would not provide additional revenue. So the 95 mills coming to the state, the $480 that I showed you there would not go up from previous year to this year. But the rest of your taxes, that's going to be determined by your local governments and your schools as they provide their budgets. Even though we might drop tax rates, your taxes would still go up. We got to remember what are appraisals used for. They're used to allocate total taxes that a local government needs. And so that's what they're used for. They do have a relationship to your tax bill, but not 100%. It's only those mills that are fixed. Most of the mills float up and down.
Hi, my name is Julie Merritt, and Representative Hertz. I'm Senator, excuse me. This question is for you again, and I agree with the comment that everyone has made that taxes are complicated. And one of the things that I noticed when we got our property valuation letters is that there was a comparison of the local government budgets over time to this metric that is the rate of inflation plus population growth. And I want to know, how do you justify using that comparison when the cost of goods and services that local governments spend money on the most have increased much more than the rate of inflation? So for example, energy costs, fuel, vehicles, tires, as Commissioner Slotnick said, road maintenance materials, equipment, and not to mention personnel, in order to hire and keep good personnel at the cities and counties. We've had to increase wages because the cost of housing in our community has gone up so much more than the rate of inflation. So my question again is, how do you justify using that metric as a basis of comparison? And I wouldn't mind hearing from Commissioner Slotnick and the director of what their thoughts are about that metric. Thanks.
Thank you for the question. No, so that metric came out of Legislative Fiscal Division. I don't serve on appropriations. I serve on taxation, a few other committees, but that was a metric that they wanted to use some comparisons across the state and see where different levels of government have grown: state government, local government, schools. And so you had to start with a metric. I think is it the best metric? I don't know. I don't know, but it's something that we can at least look at to see where the various growth rates are. And hey, I'm a businessman. I have 225 employees. I completely understand. All of us are going through the same thing. Inflation has gone up, wages have gone up, costs of goods have gone up. We're all experiencing that, and that's probably why you're going to see your tax bill go up also, because these cities and counties and schools, they're going to need to increase their budgets just to cover some of the increases that they're facing. But we're looking at a metric. That other chart that I showed you with the 5 or 6 different cities and counties, Legislative Fiscal Division right now is working on a chart that's going to have 56 counties in Montana and this county seat that you can go and see what a $375,000 house in taxes will cost you in each county. So you can kind of get an idea how all property taxes are different at a local level. And once we get some good data and good information, then we can kind of see, okay, how are we going to fix property taxes since we only have 2 major types of taxes in Montana: income taxes and property taxes. So we got to see what we can do to help alleviate some of the pressure on particularly Montana residents.
Thanks, Julie, for the question. So a couple things on budget. One, I said two-thirds of our spending comes from money that has nothing to do with property, local property taxes. It's outside sources. So measuring government budgets is not a proxy for measuring taxation. And built into that metric is an assumption that if government grows, that's a bad thing. That's an attempt with that metric to say, look how bad Missoula County is, or look how bad Gallatin County is. And I would say the larger a place is, the more complex it becomes. And it's going to take a diversity of strategies to address the problems and the issues in those places. And I'm nervous about the metric you just described, Senator, because you could say, look, a $375,000 house in Macomb County, you're paying nothing. You're paying all this money in Missoula. That's terrible. The services provided in a large place are much more robust than in a small place. They have to be. Last little piece on this. I just trying to get myself not to talk too much. There is a deep prejudice in all of this against local government. The idea that local government is spending money is terrible. First, local government is us, all of us. If you go to a soccer game at those dreaded, very expensive Fort Missoula fields, you're looking out over thousands of people watching their kids play soccer. You can see a county employee. You can see a city employee. You can see more than one or two of these folks. These are people who shop where we shop. Kids play and go to school where we go to school. Local government is us. And I bet there isn't a single person here who say, I just do not trust my fellow Missoulians. Local government is your fellow Missoulians. And if you don't like them, you can bounce them out. Second big thing I got to say on this, I'm sorry, you shouldn't have handed me the mic. Just a quick anecdote. Should I give it back? So, a couple months ago, I was standing in front of Bernice's Bakery on a Sunday morning. Beautiful, early in the morning, the dappled sun kind of coming from the northeast. It's just perfect. And there's a guy there drinking his coffee, and he recognized me. And he goes, you know, these goddamn property taxes, and what do you guys even do? And he's standing there with the coffee and the pastry, and and I'm thinking, drinking that coffee, that the water was clean. Thank you, City of Missoula. Now I'm going to blur jurisdictions, which is bad for county and city employees, but just let me blur them. The water in the coffee is clean. The pastry was made in a kitchen that was inspected. You can eat that too. The people who were working in that kitchen get paid a decent wage, even if it's minimum wage, as part of rule of law and government. And we're standing on a sidewalk that says 1931 in it, because, geez, local government did a pretty good job back in 1931. And we're standing next to the street that's got sewer and water and broadband and utilities all underneath it. And I'll just stop there. I could keep going on and on. The problem here is local government has been great and invisible. We've come to believe that our safe, secure, predictable, high-functioning society is our birthright as hardworking Montanans. No, it's no one's birthright. All of that I just described is the result of us annually and regularly committing to creating this place through sharing our resources. That's local government, and that's taxes. And it's hard to say standing there in front of Bernice's on a Sunday morning that it's a bad thing.
It's probably a mistake to follow Josh. But on the metric that you asked about, that was enacted into law as something the department was supposed to send out in 2021. And it's a lousy metric, partially for the reasons that you talk about, is it doesn't take account of the difference in housing prices that then reflect the wage inflation that has to occur so that people who are going to work for that city or county or school district can afford to live in the same community. And it's partially because it has population plus inflation, and it isn't measuring the right inflation is what I just said. But population isn't the right metric either. It's growth. It doesn't take account of the growth that occurs. And if a small community gets a new wind farm or some other kind of facility that's involved, they're going to have to increase services to protect that wind farm or other kind of facility that exists. And they're going to have to pay more taxes because of that growth. Now, it brings benefits with it. But that metric is overly simplistic, and it's designed, well, and the other part of it, I have a big quarrel with the department. It's the way they put it on that chart that you got with the appraisals. They made it into population or inflation, and if you were above either one, you were supposed to be bad. But guess what? It's population and inflation. And if they had put it on as population and inflation, all those local governments are below it. So it's a phony metric that was put on the tax bill in a wrong way. But why is it there? It's there for precisely the reason that has been stated, that it is designed to make it an issue at the state level as to what every community is spending. And that's really a matter of local democracy, subject to some pretty strict limits that Josh has explained. And really what this is a setup to do more to come after local democracy. And I'm very concerned about it.
Thank you, gentlemen, very much. My name is Andrea Davis, and our table, our question is, given the known and expected shift of tax burden to residential property owners, and the apparent no real appetite for there to be meaningful property tax reform at the state level, what are we doing at the state level in terms of either the administration or the legislature looking at in terms of what our neighbors to the east, north, west, well, maybe not the north, but maybe, actually. What are our neighboring states doing, and what might be some options for us in the future?
Could I respond to that? You guys have, let's fix the property tax system first. Let me tell you, in 1999, the legislature enacted something, and your eyes are going to glaze over, called the intangibles exemption for centrally assessed property. And that intangibles exemption is an exemption that is enjoyed by a handful of corporations, mostly telecommunications companies, the people who send you cable bills and cell phone bills, and mostly those, but some others as well. And they, last year, the value of that tax break to them was $107 million. It was 106 the prior year, 99 before that, something like that. You get the picture, and it's growing. And that's half of the increase of $200 million that's going to be placed on homeowners this year, imposed on homeowners. That was enacted in 1999, and it has grown, and it is very large. And what is an intangible? Well, let me tell you about it. A centrally assessed property is taxed on the value that arises from an integrated operation, because a cell phone tower out there cannot operate without the software and without the FCC license that it takes. And together, it's an integrated unit, along with the other cell towers and all that. It's an integrated unit. And the value comes from having all those pieces together. When you take out the intangibles, the software, and the FCC license, what's left is a cell phone tower that's worth about as much as an osprey nest pole. That's what's left. It's practically worthless, except as for an osprey nest. And so what that means is that these companies are not at market value because of that exemption. Now you can say, yeah, but what about homeowners? Well, you have an intangible in the value of your home. Every realtor in the room will say location, location, location. And that's why home prices have gone up, is because of the location value of being in places like Missoula. That's an intangible. You are fully taxed on the intangible portion of your value, and the corporations are fully exempt. That's unfair. It needs to end. First, we start by fixing that. We just raised the business equipment tax from last session. It was $300,000 exemption. Now it's $1 million exemption. Raise the exemption. Yeah, raise the exemption. Thank you. And that, I'm sorry, I'm getting inspired by Josh. Anyway, and my wife always tells me to relax, okay? So, but the point is this. We're now into subsidizing oil refineries with that. I would just point out that's where a lot of that $1 million increase will go to. But if we're going to have $1 million exemption for business equipment, why don't we have $1 million exemption for homes then? I mean, what sense does it make to pick a number and keep increasing it? We need to take a hard look at exemptions like this and decide what's appropriate or not. An exemption is justified to simplify administration, but this is way beyond that. That's a tax shift mechanism. So I say, and there's a lot more, our value, the residential property, I'll just give you the big picture, is the only class of property that feels the full wind of the marketplace. It is the only property that is valued in a way that truly reflects the market. Commercial property, about 40% of the market winds reach commercial property. About 60% of it is protected from the market winds. And for all the other classes, they do not feel the winds of the marketplace. We've got to tax, as the 72 convention said, we need to tax property equally based upon equally determined property values. I spent more years as Director of Revenue than anyone else, and I'll tell you that the system is rigged and broken, and we need a constitutional case to bring back fairness and equity in taxation if the legislature won't do it.
So all of you who are business owners in here, you understand when your taxes go up, what do? You pass that on to your consumers and I gave the example of the major utility in the state of Montana. You want to raise taxes on other utilities? That's going to come right back to your pocket, and it will increase fees. So, I mean, it's either you see the tax or you don't see the tax. So that's what we're getting down to.
Your cell phone bill and your cable bill did not go down when the intangibles exemption went up. Their national rates did not change one iota. What is on that bill isn't affected by the property taxes.
All right. Hi, I'm Linwood Fields. Thanks so much for being here. Our table was really talking about the shift of taxes, the burden shift that has happened. And our question kind of has twofold, but specifically for Senator Hertz. I'm from Whitefish, Montana, and we have very much taxed our tourists. And we would like to talk to you about legislators looking at specifically communities having the ability to tax tourism and tax tech. Because I know Dave Fern has brought that quite a few times, and the question to you is, why are legislations not supporting communities to come up with other ways to have burden tax relief?
Thanks, Lynn.
So when it comes to the resort tax, which Whitefish has, you are truly a resort community. A lot of people, it's a four-season resort, as is Gardner and other places. A good majority, I go to Whitefish maybe once or twice a year. I go to Kalispell maybe 15 times a year, or even Missoula. Why? Because I have to go there for my services. So the local option tax, which has been to the legislature since I've been there for 2013, has always failed. So why has it failed? Because a lot of individuals don't believe in. Josh and his group has come up with maybe a little bit better model, but those of us who don't live in the 7 major cities, if you all pass a optional sales, you just pass a statewide general sales tax. Because the rest of us go into your communities and we get our services and retail and we go there to eat and entertainment. So the point is, if we're going to do this, do we want to weigh in and just look at a statewide general sales tax that is fair to everybody? Because in their proposal, and I'm not promoting that, the citizens of Montana, if we go to a statewide general sales tax, that's up to the citizens of Montana. There will never be a legislature or a governor who will sign that bill unless the citizens have a citizens initiative in front of them and say, yeah, we want that. But the latest model that Josh and some of the county commissioners have come up with is rebating some of that money back to counties. That's a new model, and I think it's probably worth taking a look at. Will it pass? I don't know. But at least it's something looking at it different. But you have to, if you want to reduce property taxes, you have a few. You can either reduce expenses, or you can come up with a new revenue source, or a combination of the both. So that's what you need to look at, and that's where we're at right now. And the legislatures can continue to look at this. Like I said, the short-term rebates, short-term. And we just couldn't agree. There were so many tax bills, property tax bills last session. There was probably 25 or 30 of them. Couldn't agree on anything. You know, that's the way it happens in Helena.
Yeah, thanks. And thanks, Senator, for pushing that out. So last summer, I went and spoke with a handful of other county commissioners because those are the folks that I know. I don't know as many legislators. And I specifically went to talk with Republican county commissioners because that's where the power lies, and asked the question, what would it take for you all to support us taxing tourists? What would that have to look like? And I have to say, I was received really well by every single person, had really good conversations. Senator and I were having it made me think I got to go talk to this guy from Polson and talk some more about this. What we came up with was we would tax things that mostly tourists use and use that money directly for property tax relief. So we raise $1 million from tourists, we take $1 million off for property taxes. And then we take a chunk of that money, we were working with 10%, send that money back to the state. So then the state could redistribute that money to counties that don't have the cost and the benefit of tourism. And we're talking about things that mostly tourists use. So it's not groceries or farm equipment or hardware or t-shirts. So when people come in for services from rural areas, they're not paying for that stuff unless they choose to go out to dinner or lunch. And they're going to get more money back on a reduction on their property taxes. So they'll end up at a net gain. We were able to work with the State Chamber of Commerce and do polling on this statewide, and it polled at 70% yes, which is a slam dunk in the world of political polling. But these things take a lot of time and a lot of work, and as you could point out, I mean, it takes a long time to build coalitions and move things forward, and then it fails, and you try again. So we're hard at it, and we're gonna try again. And this may not be the best idea. This is just one idea. We may come up with something better. How we know tourists use some communities, just in terms of the numbers of tourists. So, according to the Institute for Tourism and Recreation Research, we had 3.5 million tourists here last year. In Missoula County. If Barb's got, I know we got different numbers. It's a lot. And while they're here, they spend money and put money into the local economy, and that is awesome. They do not directly pay. Direct is the key word here. Directly pay for services. And it's not because tourism is bad. Tourism is great. It's part of who we are. This is a wonderful place, and we've chosen to share it with the rest of the country, now the rest of the world. And it's worked out pretty well. And when folks are here who are visiting, they drive on our roads, and they call 911, and they interact with people who are products of our excellent public school system, and they walk on our bike paths, use bridges, use everything else. And it is not unreasonable to ask people who use services to pay for them. We just have to figure out how to do it in such a way that does not damage the tourist industry, it doesn't hurt everybody else. There's got to be a path through. 45 states have a sales tax. I don't believe that if we had a sales tax, even if it was local, people aren't going to come here. I mean, ask yourself, think about, where was the last place I went on vacation? Before you went, did you check the sales tax? You probably just went to wherever you went to. So we got a lot of work to do, but I feel like there's a glimmer of hope here, and I'm looking forward to talking with you to see if there's something we can figure out. So thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner, Senator, and Director, and Mr. Engel. Professor Engel, correct, thank you. We appreciate all that you guys do for our community, for our state, and we appreciate your participation on this panel. Again, thank you to our sponsors, especially First Security Bank and Blackfoot Communications, and of course, thank you to our wonderful audience. Before I announce next month's forum, we'd also like to recognize our board member, Robert Giblin, and his big birthday today. Happy birthday, Robert. I won't tell you the number, you can ask him. Our September 11th forum will be celebrating the Mansfield Center. Be sure to check our Facebook page or website for more details and to register. Have a great week, everybody.